Welcome to Compound Thought, where the best investments start with knowledge. Today, we're embarking on a comprehensive discussion of a truly insightful book that challenges, well, much of what we conventionally believe about money. Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money.
Yeah, it's a fantastic read. Really makes you think differently.
Absolutely. And Morgan Housel, for those who might not know, is a distinguished partner at the Collaborative Fund. He's really known for this unique ability he has to distill complex financial concepts into relatable narratives, weaving in history, philosophy, psychology, all sorts of things.
He used to be a columnist at the Motley Fool and the Wall Street Journal, right? You can see that background in his writing, making complicated stuff accessible.
Definitely. And in this impactful book, Housel provocatively argues that achieving financial success has less to do with raw intelligence or, sophisticated financial models.
Right. Less about how smart you are.
And a great deal more to do with how you behave.
Exactly. Behavior.
And behavior, as we'll uncover in our exploration today, is fundamentally a soft skill, one that is surprisingly often overlooked in a world obsessed with quantifiable formulas, precise data, and complex algorithms.
Yeah, we love the numbers, the hard data. But Housel says, hang on, the human element is maybe even more important.
Precisely. This isn't just about investing strategies. It's about understanding the human element that drives all our financial lives. So, to kick off our conversation, let's really unpack the core premise of the book. It grabs your attention right from the start with some incredibly vivid stories.
Oh, yeah.
These aren't just little anecdotes. They immediately challenge everything we might think we know about who succeeds financially and why.
Yeah.
What are some of those opening stories, and what powerful lessons do they immediately present?
Absolutely. The book opens with these two stark contrasts that set the stage beautifully. First, we meet this wildly successful tech executive.
Okay.
A genuine genius, apparently. He was instrumental in designing key components for Wi-Fi routers, made a fortune.
So, incredibly smart, successful by traditional metrics.
Totally. But his relationship with money was, well, a volatile mix of deep insecurity and outright childish recklessness.
How so?
Well, the book says he'd notoriously flash thick stacks of cash, often brag loudly without any provocation.
Wow.
Even throwing $1,000 gold coins into the ocean just for fun.
Seriously, just throwing money away.
Yeah. And there's this specific story where he accidentally shattered a lamp in a hotel restaurant. They told him it was a $500 lamp.
Okay, accidents happen.
But instead of apologizing, he pulls out this brick of cash, hands the manager $5,000, and basically tells them not to insult him like that again.
Oh my goodness, that's beyond arrogant.
All right, so despite his undeniable brilliance and massive income, this man eventually went broke. His story, sadly, is a common one of wealth gain, then just squandered through a complete lack of financial discipline.
Okay, so that's one extreme. What's the contrast?
Now, contrast that with Ronald Reed. Ronald was a humble janitor and gas station attendant from rural Vermont.
A janitor. Okay.
Yeah. First person in his family to graduate high school, apparently hitchhiked to campus every day. Lived an extraordinarily quiet, unassuming life.
Sounds like the polar opposite of the tech guy.
Completely. Fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years, then swept floors at JCPenney for another 17 years. Bought a modest little 2-bedroom house for $12,000 when he was 38 and lived there his whole life.
Okay, so a very modest life.
Very. Yet when he died at 92, he left behind an estate valued at over $8 million.
$8 million? The janitor? How?
Exactly. Primarily left to his stepchildren, a local hospital, and the library. His secret wasn't some extraordinary income or even like lottery-level luck.
Right.
It was consistent saving and immense patience. Plus, investing what little he could in reliable blue-chip stocks, shares in big, stable companies.
Yeah, those stories couldn't be more different. But the book doesn't stop there, does it? There's another compelling example you mentioned.
Exactly. There's Richard Fuscan.
Okay, who was he?
Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive, retired in his 40s. Lauded for his business savvy, leadership skills, sound judgment, all the right credentials.
So he should have been financially successful by all conventional measures. Ivy League finance exec.
Totally. Embodied traditional financial success. However, like the tech executive, his story took a tragic turn. In the mid-2000s, Fuscone borrowed heavily, massively.
Leverage.
Yeah. Expanded this enormous 18,000 square foot home in Connecticut. 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, 7 garages. You get the picture.
That sounds unsustainable.
The upkeep alone was apparently over $90,000 a month.
Per month. Wow.
So when the 2008 financial crisis hit,
predictable almost.
Yep, his high debt and illiquid assets like that giant house led to his personal bankruptcy. Homes foreclosed, mansion sold for way less than it was insured for.
So 3 stories.
Yeah.
The reckless genius, the patient janitor, the leveraged exec. What's the connecting thread?
These 3 stories, right at the start, powerfully illustrate Housel's core idea. Financial outcomes are far less about intelligence, education, or even raw talent, and overwhelmingly more about behavior. Ronald Read was patient and humble. Richard Fuscone and the tech exec were driven by ego, leverage, a desire for more, more, more.
And that behavioral difference just completely overshadowed the gaps in education or income.
Exactly. It hammers home Housel's central thesis. Financial success isn't really a hard science with predictable formulas, it's a soft skill. How you behave is ultimately more important than what you know on paper.
It really makes you fundamentally question our deeply ingrained assumptions, doesn't it?
Right?
We expect education, intelligence, elite careers to lead straight to wealth.
Right.
But these examples just flip that whole idea on its head, which leads perfectly into another key idea the book explores. No one's crazy.
Yeah, I love this chapter title.
What does Housel mean by this, and how does it help us understand why people make seemingly irrational financial decisions?
It's a brilliant reframing, I think, because it challenges the very notion that anyone is inherently crazy for their financial choices.
Okay.
Housel argues that what seems entirely irrational to one person makes perfect sense to another, simply because everyone has a unique, deeply personal experience with money.
Shaped by their background, you mean?
Exactly. It's this intricate tapestry of factors. Their generation, their upbringing, their income level, their core values, and this is critical, the specific economic conditions they faced, particularly during their formative early adult years.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about someone who grew up during, say, a period of really high inflation where money just lost value rapidly.
Right, like the 70s or early 80s in some places.
Yeah. They'll naturally view seemingly safe investments like bonds very differently than someone who experienced decades of stable prices and low inflation. Their whole perception of risk and safety is different. Their lenses are fundamentally different.
Okay, that makes sense. Different lived experiences.
And the book gives a great illustration with stock market returns. If you were born in 1970, your teens and 20s, those crucial years when you're starting to earn, maybe save a bit.
Right, forming your financial habits.
Exactly. During those years, the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold, adjusted for inflation. Tenfold.
Wow. So the market looked like a sure thing.
Pretty much. An incredibly reliable wealth-building machine. But now, if you were born just 20 years earlier, in 1950,
Okay.
the market, adjusted for inflation, went literally nowhere during those same formative years. Flat.
The same intelligence maybe, same country, but completely different market experience.
Exactly. These two groups, separated only by the chance of their birth year, go through life with radically different foundational views on how the stock market works, how much risk to take, what to expect.
That's a profound point.
Yeah.
So you're saying these deeply personal lived experiences, rather than just, reading textbooks or objective data, become the bedrock of our financial behavior.
Precisely. Housel emphasizes that what we've personally experienced, even if it's just a tiny, limited sliver of global economic history,
Yeah.
often forms 80% or more of how we actually believe the world works and how we should interact with money. These lenses mean that equally smart, well-intentioned people can arrive at wildly different conclusions about investing, risk-taking, financial priorities, and none of them are necessarily wrong or crazy.
Right. Their rational is just different based on their reality.
Exactly. The book even cites President John F. Kennedy's experience with the Great Depression. He learned about it from textbooks, discussions at Harvard.
Not by living through the hardship directly.
Right. For millions of Americans, the Depression marked them inwardly for life, fundamentally shaping their willingness to take financial risks. Kennedy, brilliant as he was, lacked that direct, visceral, emotional, first-hand knowledge.
So it's our personal histories, not just intellect, that really drive risk tolerance.
Yes. It's almost the dumb luck of when and where you were born that forms these foundational views. Housel argues that no amount of studying or intellectual open-mindedness can truly recreate the emotional power of fear and uncertainty from a lived experience. We're all, ultimately, interpreting the world through our own unique, limited, and often emotionally charged slivers of it. which, suggests we should probably practice a bit more empathy when looking at others' financial decisions.
Yeah, instead of just judging them as irrational,
Yeah.
understand their context.
Exactly.
Okay, so if behavior in these personal, deeply ingrained experiences are so powerful, how do external forces like, well, luck and risk fit into this equation?
Yeah.
The book has a truly fascinating take on this, using the story of Bill Gates and his childhood friend, Ken Evans.
Indeed. Housel posits that luck and risk are essentially two sides of the same coin. They're siblings, right? Intertwined forces.
Meaning?
Meaning they both acknowledge that outcomes in life are guided by elements beyond our individual effort and skill. Things happen to us.
Because the world's just too complex for our actions to perfectly predict outcomes.
Precisely. Now, take Bill Gates. Without question, a genius. But his story contains a significant element of what Housel calls a 1 in a million head start.
Which was?
Gates had the extraordinary fortune of attending one of the only high schools in the entire world with a computer at the time, Lakeside School in Seattle.
Back then, that was incredibly rare.
Unheard of, practically. It was thanks to a forward-thinking teacher and, get this, a Mother's Club rummage sale that funded the lease of a Teletype Model 30 computer back in 1968.
A rummage sale. Amazing.
Yeah. Most university graduate schools didn't have access to anything nearly as advanced as what Gates was tinkering with in 8th grade. He himself said, quote, "If there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft."
So that early access was a massive, almost improbable advantage. Luck.
Huge luck. But you mentioned risk as the flip side. How does Kent Evans fit in?
Right, the counterpoint. Kev Evans was Gates's equally skilled, equally driven friend. By all accounts, could have easily been a Microsoft co-founder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Same passion, same access, same intellect.
Yep. Yet, Kent tragically died in a mountaineering accident before graduating high school. Oh no.
Another kind of 1 in a million event, right?
Yeah.
A low probability, high impact risk.
Yeah.
There were only about 3 dozen mountaineering deaths a year in the U.S. His skill and drive couldn't protect him from that unforeseen risk.
So, Gates had the luck, Evans had the risk. Same starting point. Wildly different outcomes due to external forces.
Exactly. And Housel emphasizes that we often implicitly ignore luck and risk. Why? Because they're incredibly hard to quantify.
Right? You can't put them in a spreadsheet easily.
And it can even feel impolite or ungracious to bring up luck when judging someone's success or risk when assessing failure.
Mm-hmm.
Economist Robert Shiller, the Nobel laureate, admitted the one thing he wants to know about investing that we cannot know is the exact role of luck in successful outcomes.
So what's the takeaway for us then? If luck and risk are so powerful but invisible?
It means we must be incredibly careful who we praise and admire, and equally careful who we blame or criticize. Focusing too much on extreme individual case studies, the outliers, like Gates or Evans, can be profoundly misleading.
Because their stories are heavily influenced by these uncontrollable forces.
You're right. We crave simple narratives. He succeeded because he worked hard, or he failed because he made a mistake, but reality is far messier. Attributing success solely to luck can seem jealous. Attributing it entirely to skill can be demoralizing for others. But the nuanced reality is that outcomes are rarely as good or as bad as they seem, purely due to individual effort. We need to focus more on broad patterns and just acknowledge the profound role of forces beyond our control.
It doesn't diminish effort, but puts it in perspective.
Exactly, a more realistic framework.
Okay, that brings us to one of the most celebrated concepts in finance, but one the book argues is often misunderstood: compounding. The very title of this podcast is Compound Thought, so this is particularly relevant for us. How does Housel explain the truly confounding compounding?
Yeah, this is a cornerstone of the book, and he highlights just how counterintuitive its power can be. It's fascinating. He starts not with finance, but with geology.
Biology, okay.
Using the example of ice ages to illustrate how massive, seemingly impossible outcomes can arise from incredibly small, consistent changes over vast periods of time.
How does that work?
He explains that the gravitational pull of the sun and moon subtly affects Earth's tilt, leading to these tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in solar radiation reaching different parts of the planet.
Right, Milankovitch cycles, I think they're called.
Exactly. During certain cycles, one hemisphere might get just a tiny bit less solar radiation. Over tens of thousands of years, if just a small amount of leftover snow from a cool summer manages to persist and not melt, it can gradually grow, layer by layer, into miles-thick ice sheets that reshape entire continents. As one glaciologist put it, it is not necessarily the amount of snow that causes ice sheets, but the fact that snow, however little, lasts.
Wow, however little lasts. That's a powerful metaphor for money, isn't it?
Yeah, incredibly powerful. It shows that endurance and persistence, even with small inputs, are what unlock that exponential growth.
So apply that to finance. Who's the prime example?
Well, Warren Buffett, obviously. We often talk about his unparalleled investing skill, which is true. But Housel reveals this astonishing statistic.
Hold on.
Buffett accumulated $84.2 billion of his $84.5 billion net worth after his 50th birthday.
Wait, nearly all of it? After 50.
Almost all of it, and an astounding $81.5 billion after qualifying for Social Security in his mid-60s.
That's mind-boggling.
It really is. His success isn't just about being a phenomenal investor, but about being a phenomenal investor for an astonishing 3/4 of a century.
The time component is just staggering.
If he had started investing in his 30s and retired in his 60s like a normal, successful person,
Yeah.
few people would have ever even heard of him. The real magic is the time he allowed for compounding to work.
So it's not just about the rate of return, but the sheer duration. That's huge.
Precisely. The book even compares him to Jim Simons of Renaissance technologers. Simons achieved an incredible 66% annual compounding rate since 1988.
Which is way higher than Buffett's 22% or so.
3 times higher. Yet Simons is roughly 75% less rich than Buffett.
Why? Just less time.
Exactly. Simons only really found his investment stride when he was 50. He's had less than half the years to compound compared to Buffett. Housel even does the math. If Simons had earned his 66% annual returns for the same 70-year span Buffett has,
Yeah. What's the number?
he would be worth an astronomical $63 quintillion. Quintillion.
Whistles. Okay, that breaks my brain. Our linear thinking just can't grasp that.
Not easily. It's like trying to calculate 8 by 8 by 8 by 8 by 8 in your head versus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. Exponential growth is just different.
Yeah.
Housel jokes that the most powerful book on investing shouldn't have charts or formulas. It should just be called Shut Up and Wait, with a long-term chart of economic growth.
Ah, I like that.
So good investing isn't necessarily about earning the absolute highest returns possible. It's about earning consistently pretty good returns that you can stick with for the longest possible time.
Because that's when compounding truly runs wild. Patience, persistence.
And just being boring, really. Let time do the heavy lifting.
That's a powerful argument for patience. Now, while getting wealthy might be the dream, the book distinguishes that clearly from staying wealthy. What's the critical difference Housel highlights, and why is it so crucial?
Yeah, he makes a very clear distinction, one that's often overlooked. He says there are, a million different ways to get wealthy.
Right. Innovation, risk, luck, inheritance.
All that stuff. But he argues there's really only one way to stay wealthy. Some combination of frugality and paranoia.
Frugality and paranoia. That's a striking phrase.
Isn't it? It implies constant vigilance, a deep respect for how easily wealth can disappear. To illustrate, he revisits the story of Jesse Livermore.
The legendary trader.
Yeah. Famously shorted the market during the 1929 crash, made the equivalent of over $3 billion in a single day. One of the richest men in the world instantly. A genius at getting wealthy.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, overflowing with confidence, he then made larger and larger bets, often with heavy leverage.
Ah, there's that leverage again.
Got caught way over his head, accumulated huge debts, and eventually lost everything in the market. Broke, ashamed, he eventually took his own life.
Tragic. Incredible ability to make money, zero ability to keep it.
Exactly. And another example is Abraham Jermansky, a multi-millionaire real estate developer, also ruined by the 29 crash, maybe even leading to his suicide too. Both phenomenal at accumulating wealth, terrible at retaining it.
So the core lesson here is really about longevity and avoiding ruin, right? Even if it means not maximizing every single potential gain.
Absolutely. The key lesson above all else is survival. Longevity is the bedrock that makes compounding work. If you're out of the game, compounding stops, period. Housel points to Sequoia Capital, the super successful venture capital firm. They attribute their 4 decades of prosperity not to just aggressive risk-taking, but to a constant, almost obsessive fear of going out of business. Michael Moritz at Sequoia famously said, "Only the paranoid survive."
It's survival mentality.
That's what allows them to endure multiple market cycles. And Buffett's enduring success also exemplifies this. Housel notes much of Buffett's wealth comes from what he didn't do.
Like what?
He didn't get carried away with excessive debt. He didn't panic and sell during the 14 recessions he's lived through, some brutal ones. He didn't sully his reputation. He didn't rigidly attach himself to one strategy. He didn't rely on others' money in ways that could compromise his independence, and crucially, he didn't burn out.
He just survived.
He just survived, investing consistently from age 10 to, well, into his 90s now, letting compounding work its magic uninterrupted for nearly 8 decades.
Incredible discipline.
And the book introduces Rick Guerin, a third member of Buffett and Munger's early investing group, just as smart, just as capable. But Housel describes him as being in a hurry. Guerin got caught in the nasty 1973-74 downturn with margin loans borrowing money to invest.
Oh, no. Forced selling.
Had to sell his Berkshire Hathaway stock to Warren Buffett at under $40 a share, stock that later became worth hundreds of thousands per share.
Ouch. Being in a hurry cost him potentially billions.
Exactly. It starkly illustrates that being financially unbreakable and having that room for error, enough cash, flexible thinking, a loose timeline is far more important than chasing the absolute highest returns. It ensures you stay in the game long enough for compounding to work.
It's that barbelled personality again.
Right. Optimism about the future, but paranoia about what will prevent you from getting to the future. That paranoia is your safeguard.
That phrase, frugality and paranoia, really sticks with you. It seems counterintuitive, though, because so many financial decisions seem driven by this default desire for more. The book warns strongly against this in a chapter called Never Enough. What are the pitfalls of this endless appetite?
Oh, this chapter is a potent cautionary tale. It shows how not having an enough point can lead to catastrophe, even for people who are already incredibly wealthy.
Like who?
Housel revisits the stories of Rajat Gupta and Bernie Madoff. Gupta, former head of McKinsey, right? Hugely prominent, net worth already in the hundreds of millions.
That very successful.
Yet he resorted to insider trading for an extra $1 million, like a tiny sum relative to his fortune, tipping off a hedge fund manager about Buffett's investment in Goldman Sachs.
And the consequences.
Imprisonment,
Yeah.
ruined reputation, career, legacy, all for money he absolutely didn't need.
Wow. And Madoff.
Madoff, the notorious Ponzi schemer, personally worth tens of millions already. Despite that, he took colossal fraudulent risks to gain even more, leading to the collapse of his multi-billion-dollar scheme and a life sentence.
It's baffling, really, risking everything for something they didn't need.
Exactly what Buffett said about them, essentially. To make money they didn't have and didn't need, they risked what they did have and did need, and that's foolish. It just does not make any sense.
So Housel says the hardest financial skill is
Getting the goalpost to stop moving.
defining enough.
Yes. If our expectations constantly rise with our results, we're perpetually chasing this elusive target, always feeling like we're falling behind no matter how much we achieve. And that dangerous cycle inevitably leads people to take greater and greater, often unsustainable risks.
It sounds like social comparison is a huge driver of this destructive cycle. How does the book suggest we actually define enough when society constantly pushes for more?
Social comparison is definitely a huge factor. Housel gives this stark example. Think about a baseball player making $1 million a year.
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
But maybe they compare themselves to a teammate making $10 million, who then looks at a hedge fund manager making $340 million, who then looks at Warren Buffett, whose fortune grows by billions,
Right.
who then looks at Jeff Bezos, whose net worth can jump $24 billion in a year, which is more per hour than that rich baseball player made all year.
Okay, yeah, the comparison ceiling is infinitely high. You can never win that game.
Exactly. The only way to truly win, Housel suggests, is to opt out of the battle entirely. Consciously recognize when you have enough.
But how do you do that practically?
Well, Housel clarifies enough isn't about being overly conservative or leaving good opportunities on the table. It's about realizing that an insatiable appetite for max more often leads to regret, because that inability to say no to a potential dollar will eventually catch up to you through risk or maybe ethical compromise.
So practical strategies.
Setting clear, predefined financial goals linked to your personal values, like buying a specific house, funding education, achieving a certain level of passive income for retirement, and then consciously deciding that once those are met, anything extra is a bonus, not a necessity.
Mental shift, then.
Towards contentment.
Yeah, away from that constant pursuit of external validation or just higher numbers, focusing more on experiences, relationships, things that actually bring lasting happiness rather than just stuff, can naturally shift that goalpost too. Okay, so if more isn't the ultimate answer, then what is the highest form of wealth according to Housel? What does he present as the true, most valuable return on our money?
The book argues, quite powerfully, that the highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
Freedom.
Exactly. It's about freedom and, more specifically, control over your time. Housel points to research by psychologist Angus Campbell,
Yeah?
who found that having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings of well-being than any of the objective conditions of life we have considered.
Wow. So control over your time matters more for happiness than salary, house size, job title.
More impactful, Campbell's research suggests, having that autonomy, that control over your daily schedule, beats objective measures.
Helsel shares a personal story about this, right?
Yeah, a very illuminating one about a miserable investment banking internship he did.
Huh?
He actually liked the work itself.
Oh.
But the relentless lack of control over his time, the crazy hours, being constantly on call, made it absolutely unbearable. He quit after only a month.
Realizing that doing something you love on someone else's schedule can be just as bad as doing something you hate.
Precisely. It highlights that money's true value often lies not just in what it can buy, but in the options it provides. The ability to say no to things you don't want to do, and yes to pursuing your passions on your own terms.
That's a profound distinction. It shifts the focus from accumulation to liberation, really. Any other examples?
He also shares the story of a musician friend who, after saving up just $12,000,
$12,000, that's not a huge amount.
no, but he realized he had enough to quit his day job and pursue music full-time. This was long before he ever made it musically or sold a company.
So even a small amount of money provided that key independence.
It gave him the autonomy to align his life with his values, rather than being dictated by financial necessity. And Housel makes this poignant observation. Even though the U.S. is objectively richer today than, say, the 1950s in terms of stuff, GDP.
Yeah. He suggests we're not necessarily happier. A big reason, he argues, is that while we've gained material possessions, we've inadvertently lost a lot of control over our time.
How so?
Well, the rise of modern knowledge work often demands constant mental engagement, blurring work-life boundaries in a way that more manual, fixed-hour jobs of the past didn't. We're always on.
True. Less separation.
And to solidify this, the book summarizes findings from gerontologist Carl Pillemer, who interviewed 1,000 elderly Americans.
What do they say about happiness?
None of them said happiness came from working hard just to buy things or being richer than their peers. Instead, they consistently valued quality friendships, being part of something bigger than themselves, and crucially, unstructured time with family.
So it all circles back. Money's ultimate utility is granting control over our most precious asset, time.
Exactly. Which means maybe we should prioritize investments or saving strategies that facilitate that control, not just chase the highest possible return number. That leads perfectly into another counterintuitive concept from the book, touching on our perceptions and desires. Man in the car paradox and wealth is what you don't see. Can you explain these interconnected ideas? They really challenge how we often think about showing off success.
Yeah, these two are deeply linked and shine a light on our motivations. The man in the car paradox highlights the subtle but pervasive irony.
Okay.
When you see someone driving a really fancy, expensive car, you almost never think, wow, that person driving is so cool and successful.
What do we think?
Instead, our immediate internal thought is usually, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool and successful.
Huh, that's so true. We project ourselves into it.
Exactly. People often desire wealth to signal respect, admiration, or status to others. But Housel argues the observer rarely actually gives that admiration to the individual. They bypass the person entirely and just use their visible wealth as a benchmark for their own desire to be liked and admired.
Housel had personal experience with this, didn't he?
Yeah, he reflects on his days working as a valet. He realized he was always impressed by the fancy cars, not necessarily the drivers. He wondered if the drivers even knew he was just gawking at the vehicle, imagining himself driving it, and not giving them a moment's thought.
So the paradox suggests if respect and admiration are what you really want.
And then cultivating humility, kindness, empathy will likely get you far more genuine connection and regard than any amount of horsepower or fancy logos ever will.
Which connects directly to the second idea. Wealth is what you don't see. How does that work?
Well, our society tends to judge wealth by outward appearances, right?
Mm.
The nice cars, big houses, curated Instagram feeds, because that's the only information easily available.
It's what's visible.
But Housel argues compellingly that true wealth is what you don't see. It's not the fancy car purchased, but the fancy car not purchased. It's not the diamonds bought, but the diamonds not bought. The watch is not worn, the clothes forgone.
So it's the money not spent.
Fundamentally, yes. It's financial assets that haven't been converted into visible stuff. Someone driving a $100,000 car might be rich, meaning they have a high income to afford the payments.
Right, high cash flow.
But they might not actually be wealthy in Housel's sense. Wealth, in his definition, is hidden. It's income saved and not spent. And this unspent income provides options, flexibility, and the potential for long-term growth.
He used an analogy for this, doesn't he?
Yeah, a very relatable diet and exercise one. Exercise is like being rich, you do the work, you feel good, maybe you feel you deserve a big treat meal.
Okay.
But wealth, in this analogy, is turning down that treat meal. It's actually burning net calories, creating that gap between what you could consume and what you choose to consume.
Requires self-control.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification.
Absolutely. The problem, Housel notes, is it's easy to find rich role models because their consumption is highly visible. But it's much harder to find wealthy role models because their true wealth is invisible. It's in bank accounts, investment portfolios, unspent capital.
Like Ronald Reed, the janitor. He was only a financial role model after he died.
Exactly. While alive, he just seemed like a modest, ordinary guy. This hidden nature makes wealth harder to learn about and build through imitation. Because many people, deep down, want wealth for the freedom it offers, but our ingrained societal belief that having money means spending money actively prevents us from seeing and emulating the restraint required to build true wealth.
So if true wealth is paradoxically what you don't spend, the logical next step is, naturally, to save money. But the book goes way beyond the traditional reasons we usually hear, like saving for a down payment or retirement. What deeper reasons does Housel offer?
Yeah, he makes a powerful case that building wealth has surprisingly little to do with your income level or even your investment returns.
Really? Not even returns?
Well, relatively speaking, he argues it has overwhelmingly more to do with your savings rate.
Okay, explain that.
He uses an analogy from the 1970s oil crisis. The world didn't run out of oil back then, not just because we found more, but crucially because we became vastly more energy efficient. The U.S. today uses 60% less energy per dollar of GDP than in 1950.
Right. Efficiency made a huge difference.
Finding more energy is often outside our control, uncertain. But becoming more efficient with the energy we do use is largely within our control and has a 100% chance of being effective, right?
I see the parallel.
He draws it directly to personal finance, investment returns, uncertain, often outside our direct control. But personal savings and frugality finances, conservation and efficiency are largely within our control and have a 100% chance of being effective in building wealth.
Because wealth is just the leftovers after spending.
Exactly. A high savings rate fundamentally means keeping expenses lower than you otherwise could. And lower expenses mean your savings go further. Each dollar saved provides more utility towards your future goals.
And he links this back to ego, right?
Yeah, he suggests one of the most powerful ways to increase savings isn't necessarily striving for higher income, but cultivating deeper humility, curbing your ego, that innate desire to constantly keep up with others.
The peacock feathers analogy.
Right. Many people, even with good incomes, save very little because it's a daily struggle against that instinct to stretch their lifestyle to their absolute financial limits.
That's a great point about humility. But Modis also offers an even more radical idea about saving, doesn't he? Something about not needing a specific reason.
Precisely. This is one of his most profound insights, I think. He argues you don't actually need a specific, defined reason to save money.
No goal. Just save. Why?
Saving, in its purest form, is a hedge. A hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you at the worst possible moment.
For the unexpected. The unknowns.
Exactly. It's an undeclared buffer against the unknown. And what does this buffer buy you? It buys options, immense flexibility, and most importantly, control over your time.
Which he calls the highest form of wealth.
Right. He labels the return on this flexibility incalculable. Because you can't easily measure it in interest rates or market returns, we tend to overlook its immense value.
So flexibility allows you to.
Yeah. Wait for better career opportunities, maybe take calculated career risks, avoid desperate, ill-advised investment decisions when you're under financial pressure.
Right, selling low out of necessity.
What's the actual return on the cash in the bank that lets you change careers, or retire early, or just sleep soundly during an unexpected job loss? It's so large, so important, we can't put a number on it, and because we can't easily measure it, we undervalue it.
So in today's world, flexibility is a competitive advantage.
Huge. In a hyper-connected, rapidly changing world where intelligence is common, flexibility lets you adapt, learn new skills, find your niche, live life at your own pace, unburdened by urgent financial needs. Saving for flexibility is saving for independence.
This idea of flexibility and the whole human element really challenges the conventional pursuit of cold, hard rationality in finance. The book suggests we should strive to be reasonable, rational. What does Housel mean by this distinction? Why is reasonable better?
Housel makes this fundamental assertion. We are not emotionless spreadsheets. We're not algorithms. We are complex, emotional human beings.
Obviously, yeah.
Therefore, it's far more realistic and crucially more sustainable to aim for being pretty reasonable in our financial decisions rather than striving for perfect textbook rationality.
Reasonable meaning, acknowledging emotions.
Yeah, an approach that acknowledges our human biases, our emotions, and because of that, you have a much better chance of actually sticking with it for the long run.
And sticking with it is key for compounding.
Exactly. Which, as we've established, is what matters most. He tells this fascinating, kind of macabre historical story about Julius Wagner Joerg, a 19th century psychiatrist who won the Nobel Prize for curing neurosyphilis, his method, intentionally injecting patients with malaria to induce high fevers.
Wow, that sounds extreme. Did it work?
Scientifically, yes. Apparently, a 1-degree rise in body temperature can slow virus replication massively, but it was dangerous, incredibly painful, and eventually replaced by penicillin.
Okay, so what's the point?
The point is this. Despite compelling scientific evidence that fevers are beneficial for fighting infection, what do people universally do when they get a fever?
Try to reduce it. Take medicine.
Exactly. Because fevers hurt. They feel awful. Even if it's rational to let it run its course sometimes, it's not reasonable from a human comfort perspective.
That's a powerful analogy. So even if something is rational financially, if it causes too much emotional pain, people won't stick with it.
Precisely. It applies directly to money. A doctor's goal isn't just to cure, but to cure within what's tolerable to the patient. Similarly, in finance, what might be rational on paper. Like, Housel mentions a Yale study suggesting young people should super leverage their retirement accounts, borrow heavily to invest more. The math apparently showed even if they get wiped out multiple times, they'd still be better off long term if they kept doing it.
Okay, the pure math might work, but
But imagine watching 100% of your retirement savings disappear in a 50% market crash, then picking yourself up to start over again. No normal person could endure that emotional toll repeatedly. It's rational on paper, perhaps, but completely unreasonable in practice.
so being reasonable means finding a strategy you can actually live with emotionally.
Yes. The book cites Harry Markowitz, the Nobel winner who pioneered modern portfolio theory, a highly rational framework. Yet Markowitz admitted his own personal investment strategy was a mix of his theory and simply splitting his assets 50-50 between stocks and bonds.
Why?
Because he didn't want to regret his choices regardless of which way the market went. He wanted to minimize future regret. That's not irrational. It's profoundly reasonable.
Finding peace of mind.
Exactly. Jason Zweig noted people aren't rational or irrational, just human. Commitment to a strategy, even a technically imperfect one, is crucial for long-term performance. As Housel says, anything that keeps you in the game has a quantifiable advantage.
Because staying in the game lacks compounding work.
Right. The odds of making money in U.S. markets are 50-50 over one day, but basically 100% over 20 years. Endurance, driven by reasonable choices, is key. Even Jack Bogle invested some money in his son's active fund, saying sometimes you do things for family. Reasonable, not purely rational.
And speaking of unpredictability and the limits of pure rationality, the chapter Surprise warns us about what Howells calls the historians as prophets fallacy. Why is history, especially in finance, potentially a misleading guide to the future?
Yeah, this chapter delivers a core message, and it's simple but vital. Things that have never happened before happen all the time.
A reminder of how unpredictable the world is.
Totally. History is valuable, no doubt. It helps calibrate expectations, understand past human behaviors, learn from mistakes. But Housel is unequivocal. It is not a map of the future.
Why not?
Because finance isn't a hard science like physics with immutable laws. It's driven by human behavior, which is constantly evolving, adapting, surprising. As Feynman said, imagine physics if electrons had feelings. Well, investors do have feelings. Lots of them.
Which makes forecasting Incredibly hard.
And relying too heavily on past data makes us systematically miss the outlier events, the tail events, low probability, high impact stuff that ultimately move the needle the most and shape history.
Like what kind of events?
Housel asks us to think, how different would the world be without just a handful of individuals like Hitler, Stalin, Edison, Gates, or without pivotal events like the Great Depression or World War II?
Right, those were unprecedented at the time.
Exactly. Impossible to accurately predict, and their compounded effects still shape our world today. The majority of what's happening now, Housel argues, can be tied back to a handful of past, nearly unpredictable events.
So the problem is we use past worst-case scenarios as limits for the future.
Yes, we wrongly assume the future won't be more surprising or more extreme than anything that's already happened.
So we're constantly underestimating the potential for truly novel, impactful events.
Precisely. Daniel Kahneman advises the correct lesson from surprises isn't to use past surprises as a guide to future boundaries, but simply that the world is surprising. We need to accept that the truly impactful events are often the ones we couldn't have imagined.
And history can mislead because things change structurally, too.
Exactly. Widespread 401ks, Roth IRAs, relatively recent inventions. Today's financial landscape is vastly different from even a generation ago. Even Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, constantly updated and even discarded his own formulas because the market evolved. His old rules stopped working.
So the further back you look.
The more general your takeaway should be. Focus on stable human behaviors like greed and fear, not specific market trends or strategies. Specifics are always examples of evolution and progress. Historians aren't prophets.
Okay, so if the future is inherently surprising and unpredictable, what's the best way to actually plan for it? The book introduces this powerful, reassuring concept, room for error. How does Housel define this, and how can we integrate it?
Room for error or margin of safety or redundancy. It's Housel's most effective antidote to living in a world governed by odds and probabilities, not certainties. It's the only way to safely navigate that unpredictability.
How does he illustrate it?
With blackjack card counting. Even if you know you have a slight statistical edge against the casino, say 2%.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you bet everything. The casino still wins 49% of the time. You need enough money, maybe 100 basic units, as one counter put it, to withstand those inevitable swings of bad luck. You can be right more often than not and still go broke without a buffer.
Right, you need staying power.
As Benjamin Graham put it, the purpose of the margin of safety is to render the forecast unnecessary.
I like that. Render the forecast unnecessary.
It's about consciously increasing the gap between what you think will happen and what can happen. This lets you absorb bad luck, endure setbacks, and crucially, stay in the game long enough for those low probability positive outcomes to eventually fall in your favor.
We often see it as conservative, but Housel says it's the opposite.
Yeah, he argues it's what gives you the endurance needed to stick around long enough for compounding to work its magic and for those rare, big gains to materialize. The biggest gains often take time, and you need to survive to capture them.
So what are some concrete ways people can build this room for error?
Well, the biggest gains often occur infrequently, right? Either because they don't happen often or take a long time to compound. So the person with enough room for error in one part of their strategy to endure hardship in another part has a huge edge.
Okay. Examples.
Bill Gates famously kept a year's worth of payroll in the bank for Microsoft's early days, even when it seemed excessive. He knew he needed a buffer against the unforeseen. Warren Buffett prioritizes ample cash reserves, even if it means missing some potential extra profits, because he values a night's sleep. That peace of mind, that ability to withstand shock, is worth more than marginal returns.
So cash is a buffer. What else?
It's also crucial for emotional endurance during market volatility. A 30% market drop feels devastating, regardless of what a spreadsheet says you can technically endure. Having that buffer makes it tolerable.
How does Housel apply this personally?
He assumes future market returns will be 1/3 lower than historical averages. This leads him to save more as a buffer. If the future does resemble the past, great, he'll be pleasantly surprised. But he's prepared for worse, which lets him sleep well.
It's about managing expectations and emotions.
Exactly. And the book warns against Russian roulette should statistically work, a syndrome being attached to favorable odds when the downside is totally unacceptable.
Flex leverage.
Leverage is the classic example. It turns routine risks into potentially ruinous ones, wiping investors out just when opportunities might appear. Room for error also protects against unknown unknowns.
The stuff you can't even imagine.
Yeah, like the German tanks in Stalingrad defeated by mice eating their wiring. You can't plan for that kind of crazy stuff. Housel's ultimate point. The biggest single point of failure in personal finance is relying solely on a paycheck without enough savings as a buffer against life's inevitable, unpredictable curveballs.
Saving without a specific goal is saving for those curveballs.
Exactly.
Our financial lives are long, and just like the world, we ourselves change dramatically over time. The book addresses this with "You'll change" and this related bias, the end of history illusion. How does our evolving self impact long-term financial planning?
Yeah, this chapter highlights a fundamental challenge. It's incredibly hard to make enduring long-term decisions when your future self will likely have different goals, desires, even a different personality.
Like the doctor's story.
Right. Housel shares the story of a friend who pushed relentlessly to become a doctor, achieved it, and then found the career awful due to the stress and demands. It's common. People pick careers young and later regret them. Statistics show only about 27% of college grads have jobs directly related to their major.
We change more than we expect.
Exactly, and that's compounded by the end of history illusion.
Which is?
Our tendency to be keenly aware of how much we've changed in the past. We look back at our younger selves and see clear evolution, but we dramatically underestimate how much our personalities, desires, goals, values are likely to change in the future. As psychologist Daniel Gilbert explained, we falsely believe that Jeremy won't fundamentally change us. We imagine our current self, just with more money or a different job, not a truly transformed future self.
So how do we reconcile the need for long-term consistency in finance, like Munger says, never interrupt, compounding with the reality that we change and our lives interrupt things?
Exactly. It's a profound challenge. How do you avoid interrupting a money plan, career choices, investment strategies, spending habits, when what you fundamentally want out of life is bound to change?
Was Housel's suggestion.
He suggests the solution lies in avoiding the extreme ends of financial planning.
Meaning?
Neither living on an excessively low income, sacrificing all present joy, nor working endless, exhausting hours solely for a high income. The benefits of these extremes often wear off as people adapt, but the downsides, being unprepared for retirement or realizing you spent your life just chasing dollars, become enduring regrets.
So balance is key for sustainability.
Yes. Aiming for moderate annual savings, sufficient free time, a reasonable commute, quality family time, this increases the odds of sticking with a plan, because it accommodates inevitable changes and minimizes future regret. Endurance is crucial for compounding, and a balanced life fosters that endurance.
And it relates to sunk costs, too.
Yeah, it encourages us to accept changing our minds and abandon sunk costs. Those decisions anchored to past efforts that can't be refunded. Daniel Kahneman famously said, "I have no sunk costs," when asked about starting a book draft over. It's the freedom to shed past commitments that no longer serve our evolving selves. Don't let past decisions bind your future self if your values have shifted.
But even with the best plans and a flexible mindset, the world isn't free. The book makes a compelling case in Nothing's Free that investing, despite its promise of returns, has a hidden price. What exactly is this price?
This is a crucial chapter for anyone in the markets. Housel argues everything worthwhile has a price. With investing, that price isn't dollars and cents for a service. Instead, it's paid in. Well, volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, and regret.
The emotional toll.
Exactly, the psychological cost. They're easy to overlook until you're right in the thick of them. Like thinking a CEO's job looks easy until you're actually facing the pressure.
Okay. Examples in the market.
The S&P 500 increased, 119-fold over 50 years? Incredible return. But it traded below its previous all-time high on many, many days during that period. Netflix stock returned over 35,000% from 2002 to 2018, astronomical, but it traded below its previous all-time high on 94% of those days.
94%, wow. So most of the time, even huge winners are down from their peak.
Right. That consistent decline, the accompanying emotional discomfort, the volatility, the fear that is the undeniable cost of admission to achieve those kinds of long-term returns.
But people try to avoid that cost, right? Market timing.
Exactly. Housel says many investors try to get the returns without paying the price. They try to time the market, sell before recessions, buy before booms, like trying to steal the returns.
And does it work?
Almost universally backfires. Studies show tactical mutual funds designed to do this consistently underperform simple passive strategies. Individual investors do it too, underperforming the very funds they invest in by buying and selling at the wrong times out of fear or greed.
So by trying to avoid the price, the volatility, they end up paying double.
Yep. missing returns and incurring costs. The deep irony.
So how can we reframe our perception? View volatility as a necessary fee rather than a painful fine.
That mindset shift is absolutely crucial. Housel makes the point. Market volatility feels like a fine, a penalty for doing something wrong. But it's not. It's a fee, a necessary, unavoidable cost for a valuable product.
Like a theme park ticket.
Exactly his analogy. A Disneyland ticket might cost $100, but you get an awesome day, memories. Few people feel that ticket is a fine. It's a worthwhile trade-off for the magic. Similarly, if you view market ups and downs as the required admission fee for the magic of long-term compounding returns,
It becomes a worthwhile trade-off.
completely transforms your perspective. This mindset is profoundly important for sticking with a strategy long enough for it to work. Market returns are never free. They demand you pay that psychological price. The trick isn't just putting up with it, but actively convincing yourself the market's fee is worth it, realizing it's an admission fee worth paying for long-term wealth and freedom.
Turns a negative into a necessary positive.
Precise.
It sounds like many of us are playing a financial game we don't fully understand, or maybe playing the wrong game entirely. The chapter You and Me delves into this, right? How our differing goals and timelines lead to different, yet equally rational decisions.
Yeah, this chapter is a brilliant insight into market dynamics and personal finance. It highlights that phenomena like investment bubbles aren't solely due to widespread irrational greed.
What else contributes?
They often arise because different investors are playing fundamentally different games, driven by disparate goals and time horizons. Housel challenges the idea that assets have one single rational price when investors' motivations vary so wildly.
An example.
A day trader might find a stock's seemingly ridiculous price perfectly rational if their plan is just to sell it in hours for a tiny gain. Their game is super short term. But that very same price could be utterly disastrous for a long-term investor with a multi-decade horizon. Their game is completely different. These different games lead to prices that make sense to one person but not another because the factors they watch, their measures of success, are totally different.
Like during the dot-com bubble.
Exactly. The book notes record trading volumes, then a clear sign of frantic short-term trading, not calm, long-term investing. The average mutual fund in 1999 had 120% annual turnover. They were thinking about the next 10 months, not the next 20 years.
And this applies to spending, too. Social pressure.
Yeah, much consumer spending is socially driven, influenced by people we admire. But without seeing their underlying goals and constraints, their unique game, we might set ourselves up for disappointment trying to keep up.
Like the lawyer versus the writer example.
Right. A young lawyer aiming for partnership might feel a legitimate need to maintain a certain appearance, which a writer working happily from home just doesn't. They're playing different games with different rules.
That's a powerful call for self-awareness. So how does Housel suggest we identify our game and avoid getting sucked into others?
The key takeaway is simple but often overlooked. Clearly identify what game you are playing with your money. Housel suggests rating a personal financial mission statement.
Like a business mission statement.
Sort of. It's a practical tool to filter out distractions and avoid being swayed by others playing different games. For example, I am a passive investor, optimistic in the world's ability to generate real economic growth, and I'm confident that over the next 30 years, that growth will accrue to my investments.
So it defines your belief, time frame, strategy.
Exactly. Once you have that clarity, you can easily filter out what's irrelevant to your game, like worrying about a recession next year, or what some day trader on social media is hyping.
You just ignore it because it doesn't apply to your game.
Right. You don't pay attention, and crucially, you aren't persuaded by it. It prevents you from inadvertently adopting others' goals or strategies, which are often incompatible with your own long-term well-being. Build your internal compass.
Our cognitive biases are fascinating, and the media often plays into them. The book explores this in The Seduction of Pessimism. Why does bad news, especially financial bad news, resonate so strongly? Why does it often sound smarter than optimism?
Housel opens this chapter brilliantly. For reasons I have never understood, people like to hear that the world is going to hell.
Huh. It's true, though, isn't it?
Pessimism isn't just common. It often sounds inherently smarter, more intellectually captivating, more profound than optimism.
What does he mean by real optimism, though? Not just wishful thinking.
Right. Real optimism, he clarifies, isn't blind complacency. It's a pragmatic belief that despite inevitable setbacks, the odds of a good outcome are in your favor over time. because progress is slow, but adaptable and persistent. Yet forecasts of outrageous optimism are rarely taken as seriously as prophets of doom.
He gives an example of this.
Yeah, the Russian professor Igor Panarin, whose 2008 Wall Street Journal article predicted the U.S. would break into 6 pieces by 2010.
Which was absurd.
Totally absurd in hindsight. But it was taken far more seriously by many than, say, a hypothetical optimistic forecast for post-WWII Japan, which actually experienced an incredible, unprecedented economic boom.
So why this intellectual allure of pessimism? Is it hardwired?
Partly instinctual, yeah.
Yeah.
Our evolutionary shield makes us treat threats as more urgent than opportunities. Losses loom larger than gains. And money is ubiquitous. Bad financial news affects literally everyone, capturing widespread attention, unlike, say, a local flood. A recession could impact you, making it feel personal and urgent.
And the media amplifies this.
Definitely. Stocks up 1% gets a brief mention. Stocks down 1% gets bold, red headlines. Fear sells.
Are there other reasons pessimism is so seductive?
Yeah, pessimists often make the mistake of extrapolating present trends linearly, without accounting for how markets adapt, how problems get solved, how human ingenuity finds solutions.
Like the oil depletion predictions.
Exactly. Predictions in 2008 didn't foresee the fracking boom. Human adaptability constantly disrupts pessimistic forecasts. And finally, Housel notes progress often happens too slowly to notice, while setbacks happen too quickly to ignore.
Gradual improvements versus sudden crises.
Right. Medical advances save millions annually, largely unnoticed. A plane crash dominates headlines instantly. This makes pessimistic narratives easier to construct, more dramatic, more compelling, even if long-term rational optimism is actually a more reasonable bet for most people.
And when stakes are incredibly high, the book suggests there's a point when you'll believe anything. What are these appealing fictions we fall for, and why are we so susceptible, especially with money?
Oh, this chapter is a profound look at human vulnerability. It highlights how desperately wanting something to be true makes us far more likely to believe stories that wildly overestimate its odds.
Believing what we want to believe.
These appealing fictions are incredibly powerful. They arise when people face this potent combination of limited control and extremely high stakes. They can make you believe almost anything.
You give some stark examples, right?
Harrowing ones. Like a Yemeni father, desperate to cure his sick son, no money for medicine, agreed to a folk remedy involving a burning stick applied to the child's chest. His reason: when you have no money and your son is sick, you'll believe anything.
Oh my goodness. That's heartbreaking.
And historically, during the Great Plague of London, people turned to infallible preventive pills and sovereign cordials out of sheer, overwhelming desperation.
So how does this apply to finance?
It explains why people listen to investment commentary with notoriously poor track records, or why they fall for elaborate Ponzi schemes like Bernie Madoff.
Even when there were red flags.
Yeah, which in hindsight seem obvious. Madoff told a very compelling story, and crucially, people wanted to believe it because it offered a way to bypass the harsh realities and uncertainties of real market returns. The potential for extreme rewards in investing makes people incredibly willing to believe low-probability bets are sure things, or that guaranteed high returns without risk are plausible.
We crave predictability and control.
Exactly. We instinctively want to believe we live in a predictable, controllable world. So we turn to authoritative-sounding people who promise to satisfy that deep need, even if they're fundamentally wrong. The illusion of control is often more persuasive than the unsettling reality of uncertainty.
So it's our emotional need for control, clashing with a chaotic reality. How can we protect ourselves from these appealing fictions in our own financial lives?
Housel emphasizes that having that room for error,
Yeah.
maintaining flexibility, and building true financial independence are indispensable precisely because they protect us.
Ow.
If the gap between what you want to be true and what needs to be true for an acceptable outcome is too large, you become incredibly vulnerable to believing anything that promises to bridge that gap.
Like policymakers projecting slow growth when a recession looms.
Exactly. It becomes an appealing fiction they propagate because expecting worse is too painful or politically difficult. Incentives powerfully influence our beliefs. The key is to humbly acknowledge the world is more surprising than our forecasts, and not let our desire for certain outcomes warp our perception of reality.
Especially since the world runs on stories.
Right. We tell ourselves stories to fill the gaps. The best defense is a strong financial position that doesn't require appealing fictions to make sense.
Oh, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, exploring some truly thought-provoking ideas from the psychology of money. The book culminates in All Together Now, summarizing key actionable lessons. What are some of those vital takeaways our listeners can start integrating?
Yeah, the book masterfully distills its wisdom, and it emphasizes a crucial point. While universal truths exist, how you apply them varies. There's no single right answer, only what works for you. But some vital takeaways include:
Okay, like what?
first, less ego, more wealth. Wealth is built by suppressing today's desires for future options. It's that gap between your ego and your income. Smaller ego often means higher savings, more wealth. Define success by what you keep, not what you spend.
Got it. What else?
Manage your money to sleep at night. This is the best universal guidepost, he says. Regardless of whether it maximizes returns on paper, your peace of mind is invaluable. If a decision causes chronic stress, even if rational, it's probably wrong for you. Find what brings you calm.
Makes sense. Next.
Increase your time horizon. Time is the most powerful force. It lets small things grow huge via compounding, and big mistakes fade. Think decades, not months. Focus on long-term progress, not short-term noise.
Crucial for compounding, okay?
Become okay with a lot of things going wrong. You don't need to be right all the time. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune, because a few things drive most outcomes. Expect failure, diversify, understand success often comes from a few big winners.
Don't sweat the small losses if you have big wins.
Exactly. Also, be nicer and less flashy. Remember the man in the car paradox. No one is impressed with your stuff as much as you are. Kindness, humility bring more genuine respect than horsepower or logos. Invest in social capital.
Good reminder. Keep going.
Just save without a specific reason. Save for the inevitable surprises. That undeclared buffer provides invaluable flexibility and control. It's your hedge against the unknown.
All right.
Define the cost of success and be ready to pay it. Remember, market volatility is a fee, not a fine. It's the price for worthwhile long-term returns. Embrace it as the cost of admission.
Fee, not fine. Got it.
Worship room for error. That margin of safety gives you endurance. Endurance lets compounding work. It protects against unknowns and keeps you in the game.
Survival is key.
Avoid the extreme ends of financial decisions. Balance increases the odds you'll stick with a plan as your goals inevitably change, minimizing future regret. Moderate savings, time, commute, sustainability.
Avoid future regret.
Smart, like risk, but be paranoid of ruinous risk. Take calculated risks that pay off over time, but never ones that can wipe you out. Ruin eliminates all future opportunities. Survival first.
Don't play financial Russian roulette.
Right. Define the game you're playing. Avoid being swayed by others playing different games with different goals. Your mission statement keeps you focused.
Know your own rules. And finally,
Respect the mess. Smart people can disagree in finance because it's deeply personal. Different goals, experiences, desires. There's no single right answer, only what works for you. Embrace the messiness.
those are incredibly powerful and actionable insights. And the book closes with the author's deeply personal confessions, revealing how he applies these principles, putting his money where his mouth is. What does his personal philosophy look like?
Yes, confessions are really illuminating. They show how he translates these principles into concrete, psychologically reasonable choices for his own family. He shares his main goal has always been independence, not just getting rich.
Independence over riches.
He mentioned Sandy Gottsman asking potential team members, "What do you own and why?" to highlight that gap between rational sense and what just feels right emotionally. Housel and his wife consciously maintained a moderate lifestyle from their 20s, meaning virtually every raise went straight to savings, their independence fund. Living below their means removes huge social pressure. It aligns with Nassim Taleb's idea that true success is exiting some rat race for peace of mind.
And he makes some unrational choices.
He openly confesses to it. Prime example, owning their house outright, no mortgage, despite low interest rates. Rationally, advisors would say leverage cheap money.
But for him,
The profound feeling of independence, security, peace of mind from owning it outright far exceeds any potential financial gain from leveraging or investing that capital elsewhere. He defends it with his sleep, his sense of control. What works for them is paramount.
that's fascinating. Prioritizing peace of mind over optimized returns.
Yeah.
What about his investment strategy itself? Cash holdings?
They also keep a much higher percentage in cash than usually recommended, maybe 20% outside their house value. He sees cash not as a drag, but as the oxygen of independence.
Why?
It ensures they are never forced to sell stocks at a bad time due to unexpected expenses or market drops. This buffer drastically increases the odds of letting their long-term investments compound uninterrupted. Everyone faces unexpected big expenses eventually.
So cash provides staying power for the investments.
Exactly. And his core investing strategy. Remarkably simple, consistently investing in low-cost index funds for decades.
No stock picking, no market timing.
Nope. Relying on a high savings rate, immense patience, and optimism in long-term global economic growth, he focuses effort on controllable factors, recognizing little correlation between investment effort and investment results because the world is driven by those unpredictable tail events.
So it's about finding what works for him, prioritizing peace of mind and longevity over maximizing every penny.
Precisely. He says he can afford not to be the greatest investor, but he absolutely cannot afford to be a bad one, which makes index funds and discipline a no-brainer for his family. He respects others will disagree, but his choices align with his goals. Independence, flexibility, well-being. It shows personal finance is truly more personal than finance.
A perfect summary. And a final thought for you, our listener, building on that. If the highest form of wealth is control over your time, what single financial decision could you make this week to reclaim just 1 hour of your own? Thanks for listening, Compound Thought. If you enjoyed this in-depth exploration, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Share it with a friend and subscribe so you never miss our next discussion. See you next time.